welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ryley.
And I'm Ellie.
Today we sat down with Mr. Jim Hurricane Hayward. Hurricane Hayward is a first for the Tiki Talk Show, and like a great journalist, came to us live on location from the Mai Kai. Hurricane Hayward has been a constant presence in the South Florida Tiki scene for almost 20 years. He has been part of the Hukilau team, reported on countless Tiki events from around the world, and has been a lover of the Mai Kai since he first went there in the early 2000s.
Hurricane Hayward has been running his blog, the Atomic Grog, since the early 2010s. Like Ryley said, he's been reporting on Tiki events for quite some time, and since 2020, he's been the best source on up-to-date news for the Mai Kai. He's chronicled the sale, restoration, and reopening of the greatest Tiki palace in the world.
Hurricane Hayward's work has helped us so much with our show, and we really appreciate him coming on.
I don't think anyone needs another excuse to go to the Mai Kai, but thank you again for going out there, talking with us, and showing off the beauty that the Mai Kai Gardens have to offer. Also, a very special thank you to the Mai Kai for allowing Hurricane Hayward to record while he was there.
So without further delay, over to Jim Hurricane Hayward.
Aloha from sunny South Florida and the Mai Kai in the tropical South Florida environment.
Yes, welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Ryley.
And we are joined by Mr. Jim Hayward, better known as Hurricane Hayward, coming to you live from the Mai Kai. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm trying to stay dry. This is not special effects. This is this is actually how it rains. People who don't live here kind of get freaked out when they see this rain. Hopefully it won't last for the full hour of our
Yeah. So for anyone who, for all the people that are listening, can you describe where you're sitting right now, where it is in the restaurant and kind of the garden area?
Yes, this is actually one of the more secluded areas. It's out behind the dining rooms. It's an outdoor, they call it the garden, or the Tiki garden, or the back garden. There's a lot of names for it, but it's basically this huge area out behind the Mai Kai where you can walk through paths and see giant tikis. And if you've watched some other videos about the Mai Kai, you've seen people out here on a daily basis. There's a lot of tiki torches are actually in full flame right now. The rain does not affect them.
Wow.
And at night, you see a lot of more of an exotic environment when the sun goes down, and it's just a magical place out here. I was married here in 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
A marriage area in the back where a lot of people hold ceremonies, and my wife and I were married here in 2010. Susan, my lovely wife, I'd like to thank her for bearing with me all these years, and we were just remarried there a few months ago. So
That's amazing.
Renewal ceremony. So this is something you don't get almost anywhere at any other tiki bar or a tiki restaurant. I wouldn't even call the Mai Kai a bar, but maybe in Hawaii, maybe in some more exotic locations, you'll have this kind of an outdoor space, but it's very unique situation here at the Mai Kai.
Yeah. So can you give yourself a little bit of an introduction and tell us how you got into Tiki?
Okay. Jim Hurricane Hayward's my name. Hurricane comes from Tiki Central. So early on when I discovered Tiki Central, everyone told me, hey, you got to have a handle. You have to have a nickname. You can't just go on there with your real name. In those days, everybody had a nickname. So I came up with Hurricane. But we'll get back to that. That's really kind of how I adopted my persona, as it were, and kind of became part of the Tiki scene. Before that, and for about 40 years, I was a professional journalist. I worked for the Palm Beach Post and the Miami Herald, and I've been in South Florida since the mid-'70s. So I have a deep background in journalism, and along with that, I've had a lot of hobbies over the years. And Tiki is just sort of my latest hobby. And since I retired in 2022, I've really taken the advantage of that and dove deep into Tiki. I grew up on the East Coast. I was born in New Jersey, and my family was from the Northeast. And I have vague recollections. I'm a child of the 60s, not to date myself, but I was born in 61. So I remember a lot of things that were going on in those days. My parents took me to restaurants in New York City. I vaguely remember having my first fufu platter. And for the life of me, I can't remember. Well, I was too young, but my father can't remember exactly what restaurant it was. I'm thinking it might have been the Hawaii Kai.
Hmm.
I don't think it was Trader Vic's, but in any case, I was fascinated with that. I remember that clearly. And at some point, as I was growing up in that era, my father changed careers and he started doing before he was doing concerts, he did custom car shows. So he was a custom car show promoter in the 60s. And I
Wow.
don't know how much you know about that era, but that was sort of like the beginnings or the heyday of the hot rod culture. There was
Yeah.
George Barris creating custom cars. And as a kid, this was like really cool stuff to me. Big Daddy Roth, the Rat Fink, and
Yeah.
along with that came music. And it was sort of this whole subculture that as a kid, I was kind of fascinated with. My father had some shows where he promoted car shows with some of those vintage, like the Batmobile. The Batmobile,
Oh, awesome.
I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. And when I got to sit in the Batmobile at a car show, I was like, this is incredible. I love this. And I remember seeing the artists who would create their crazy t-shirts. And this was also the early days of lowbrow art, that whole lowbrow scene, which at the
Yeah.
time nobody really labeled it that, I don't think. But this is all ingrained in my head growing up in the Northeast, and it kind of just sat there for a long time because things change. I grow up; it's the '70s. We move around. We're in the Midwest for a little while, and then we move to Florida, and things are not quite the same in the '70s as they were in the '60s. So I went to college, got my journalism degree, working in journalism, and I started dabbling in concert promotion. So by the '90s or so, Slammy Productions was actually a big time independent concert promoter in South Florida. So in addition to my work with the newspaper, my hobby was promoting concerts. And the slammy.com domain actually dates back to those days. People might wonder what is slammy.com? It's actually the domain I've had for 25 years that was originally a concert promotion company. And you can still look on there and see all the old concerts I've promoted over the years. The South Florida scene was huge in those days. So I dipped my toes into like every kind of musical style. I did a lot of funk concerts and metal concerts. I actually managed a metal band for a while. So I was really busy in those days with music, and it was fun. Yeah. And I got to experience a lot. I remember the surf music revival coming around in the '90s, and there was just a revival of all kinds of different vintage cultures, whether it be swing music or different things. In Florida, we're a little far removed from the rest of the world. We're kind of late to jump on the bandwagon of things, so we were not quite the epicenter of any kind of a revival. But I remember seeing little hints here and there, like something's going on. And a friend of mine opened a bar very close to me called the Jet Setter Lounge. And the Jet Setter Lounge was a huge influence on me and a lot of other people in the South Florida scene. I think it was open from 2005 to 2007. And the Jet Setter, the late Mike Jones, who sadly passed away last year, was the owner operator. And at his establishment was the first time I actually saw, or actually, not that I actually was not exposed to them earlier, but I kind of got the association between the mid-century and the modern. I saw shag paintings on the wall. I saw Tiki Farm mugs for the first time. And all of a sudden, things started to click in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, this is stuff I remember. I love the mid-century. I always loved mid-century modern design, and I just thought it was a relic of the past until I discovered Tiki Farm and then Tiki Central, and a lot of things were clicking in those days. The Hukilau had just started a couple of years earlier, and I was doing concerts all over the place, and I would meet some of the people that were into music and Tiki at the same time and into my concerts, and one thing led to another, and I met Tiki Kaliki, Christy White, and she introduced me to the Hukilau. I think it was 2006 or 7 is when I first got my taste of the Hukilau, and by 2008 I was involved and part of her crew, and I'm still here. It's been going strong ever since. That's a very long answer, but I didn't want to miss anything of those early influences.
Yeah.
And one of the things you're probably best known for is your Atomic Grog blog.
Yes, that was a kind of an offshoot of Tiki Central, I would guess. I just I never really wanted to write for a career. I was an editor my whole career in newspapers. I was a copy editor. I was a news editor. I did a lot of websites. Early in the development of the web, I would help put the newspaper online, and that was sort of my gig. And on top of that, I didn't want to just spend all my off time writing. That sounded boring to me until until I met a gentleman named Jeff Beachbum Berry.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know Jeff. I met him at the Hukilau. We hung out. At this point, I was already deeply immersed in the Mai Kai, and we'll get to the Mai Kai. That's a big piece of this. But I met Jeff, and in those days, Jeff, before Latitude 29, he was just starting to do his presentations, and I was blown away by his presentation on stage. And I picked up his books. I started reading Grog and then Intoxica. And then when Sip and Safari came out, I was, pre-ordered it. I don't know if you could pre-order in those days, but I made sure I got Sip and Safari the day it came out. And Jeff had a blog. He had a beachbumberry.com blog where he just wrote about his musings about tiki and cocktails. And I was, by this point, I was making all his drinks at home and trying to perfect my skills.
Mhm.
And at some point, talking to Jeff, I thought, wait a minute, if he can write about cocktails, I can write about cocktails. So I came up with this idea to document all the Mai Kai cocktails on a blog. So I had earlier posted on Tiki Central about the Mai Kai cocktails, and I'd gone through every one of them on the menu and rated them and ranked them, and that was kind of a thing. So I decided, oh, why don't I just transfer this to something that I control, because I wasn't sure, how long Tiki Central would last. Luckily, it's still around.
Yeah.
But having a blog in those days was kind of a new, kind of a cool thing. This was like the heyday of blogs, 2011.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good, cool cocktail blogs, but here I am, almost 15 years later, and I'm still one of the last bloggers standing. But
Yeah.
tends to be my MO. I get involved with something, and then I never leave. So I'm for the long run. I'm never gonna shut it down unless there's some technical reason to do so. I've tried to keep it alive and going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you were mentioning some of like the early things in your childhood and growing up that put the kind of the perfect storm that will eventually get somebody into tiki. And I always think that's such an important part. And I've told the story a couple of times when Ellie took me to the Bali High and then False Idol for the first time, and then it all clicked together.
Yeah.
What was it like the first time that you went to the Mai Kai? Did you have that moment to say like, this is what I like, or kind of this was the missing element, or how was that going for the first time?
Yeah, it was definitely the missing element because there's just nothing that compares. I know you've heard that before, people say that, and you see the videos and they look spectacular, and you think, oh, it can't be that good.
Yeah.
When someone finally talked me into coming here, I mean, I'm criminally bad about my past experience at the Mai Kai, because when I was a rambunctious youth and promoting concerts and thought I was a cool hipster, I wouldn't come here, because in those days, in the 80s and 90s, this was like an old folks restaurant. You drive by, oh, it looks great. I'd heard about the barrel of rum and different things, but none of my friends came here, and nobody my age typically would come here unless it was a family gathering or a special event, or it was just sort of like a special event kind of restaurant you would go to. I mean, it looked spectacular. But around the same time, I started to get to know people in the scene and the Hukilau. And the Hukilau is what kind of sucked me into the Mai Kai. The Hukilau and other groups of people, the local Fraternal Order of Moai, the rockabilly guys who would, some bands would start playing in the Molokai bar. And then bands that I liked were actually playing in the Molokai bar, surf bands and rockabilly bands. And all of a sudden, in my mind, as now I'm 40 years old, so I'm not as kind of judgmental as I was as a kid. All of a sudden, the Mai Kai just everything I ever wanted in one place. And I remember coming here the first time, some friends brought me in here. We sat in the Molokai bar for happy hour, which was 5 to 7 p.m. and we had happy hour. Oh, this is great. Let's order another drink and get some food. And we were just having such a good time. The next thing I know, it's like 1, 2 a.m. and they're going, oh, we got to leave. It's so immersive a space. There's no television, there's no windows to the outside world when you're inside most of the indoor spaces. And there was so much to see and experience here, and the drinks were so good that
Yeah.
I was just sucked in. I was like, there's just nothing like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine just, I mean, we again, we have not been, but from everything that we've heard and the people who take videos, they say that, I mean, just even doing a walkthrough still doesn't capture it all in the moment as if you're fully there, immersed in it. And I think, you know, that's a lot of the magic and kind of charm of the Mai Kai. And so you're now into the tiki scene. You're getting involved with people. How did you get involved in with the Hukilau team and going from being an attendant to now being part of that?
Right. You could say I'm fully immersed. That's
Yeah.
I'm the definition of full immersion.
Yeah.
I was you know, working with Christy, and Christy needed my expertise on promoting bands and promoting the event. So I was pretty much one of her key promoters for quite a number of years. And at this point, internet was becoming a lot more crucial to promoting an event. So I would help her with online promotion and creating press releases, and I helped her book some bands like Low Straitjackets. And I just got more and more involved every year. I went from 1 year I was just doing 1 or 2 things to, you know, the next year I'm doing a whole bunch of things. And then in 2017, I got up the courage to actually go on stage at the Mai Kai and do a presentation.
Yeah.
By that point, you know, I'd been involved 5 or 7 years, and I had seen other people. I you know, longed to do what Jeff has been doing all those years. And my friend Tim Swanky Glasner, who wrote the book on the Mai Kai, had his book released here in 2016. And that was kind of like the mass when everybody came on board, I think, in Tiki, that 2014, 15, 16, 17, those years, it kind of exploded. And I got more and more involved. I started doing on stage presentations, and just over time, the Mai Kai sort of, I wouldn't say accepted me. They've more than accepted me. They've opened their arms and brought me in and treat me like family. And you know, it's like a big family here. And it was so sad when they had to close in 2020. And that's when I took it upon myself to, you know, dust off my journalism skills and actually cover the restoration and reopening in depth, in detail, as, you know, as neutral as I could be. I mean, I don't shy away from being a lover of the Mai Kai, but I'm honest and accurate in all my reporting. So what you read on my blog during the closing is 100% accurate, and everything that was going on here. So it was just a thrill to see it reopen last year. We're coming up on a year. It'll be a year in November since they reopened, and it's bigger and better than ever. I mean, it's almost good that you guys are waiting to come at this point, because it's operating on all cylinders now. Everything is perfect.
Yeah. Did you ever have an itch that maybe when it was closing, because there was, I mean, so for anyone that isn't aware, the Mai Kai kind of had some big hits to it between a hurricane, a fire, and then just years of, you know, thousands of patrons, you know, takes its toll eventually. Were you ever worried that the Mai Kai was at risk of permanent closure, or was that ever a thought, or were you aware of the sale before it happened?
Not really, because I was close enough to know better. I live about 16 miles away, so I could come by here anytime I wanted and look around and see what was going on. And I was also very, very much in touch with the management who had stayed with the Mai Kai during those closing years. It was troubling. There's a lot of misconceptions on what happened. There was no fire. There was no storm damage per se. What happened is, I mean, this is an old place. It was over 60 years old in 2020, 64. And there's a area in the back of house where the kitchen used to be that was built in the 1970s. So it's not this vintage front of house that we enjoy. The front of house and the main building is indestructible. I don't think it's survived dozens and dozens of hurricanes, and it's a solid building. But what happened to the back of house building is it was a a kitchen building, like built with a flat roof on it. As you know, as they did in the 70s, they just built this huge kitchen to service the thousands of people who come here. And by 2020, there was a lot of issues with the roof and leaks, and we had a torrential rain, and the sprinkler system went haywire, and all night long the sprinklers ran. And that put such a load on the roof that the roof over the kitchen collapsed. And then when the roof over the kitchen collapsed, this is a massive kitchen, it shut down everything. They couldn't reopen, A, without a kitchen, and B, they had to shut down, you know, all power, all, you know, they had to turn off all utilities. And the restaurant sat open, it didn't open for, you know, another 4 years, but it sat closed for a year. And during that year, the owners, the original owners, the family that opened the restaurant in 56, came to the conclusion that they didn't have the money to rebuild in the way that was necessary. I mean, it was a huge rebuild of not only the kitchen, but the roofs needed to be redone, and a lot of things had to be rebuilt in the infrastructure. So that was the worrisome period. During those, that was the year that everyone was kind of worried, but the family was really resolute in their, they wanted to keep it the Mai Kai. They wanted to keep it a restaurant. They didn't not want to sell to a developer. This is almost 3 acres of land, and it's prime real estate. They could have sold it and had it subdivided into condos, and they didn't do that. There's such a history here. And the restaurant is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's also a local historic landmark. And the local government, City of Oakland Park, was 100% behind the Mai Kai, wanting to keep it. They were pushing to keep it and keep it preserved. So a historic preservationist by the name of Bill Fuller, who is based in Miami, and he has a company that restores historic properties. And he just so happens to have been a fan of the Mai Kai. And he also operates a restaurant group that operates historic restaurants. So he was the perfect guy to come in. And when he came on board in, I think it was September of 2021, almost a year after the closing, that's when the switch was flipped. Now there's no chance of the Mai Kai going away. They've got a millionaire with millionaire friends who are putting, you know, so much money into this place. It's incredible what they did, and it took them another 3 years to get it done. They brought in Typhoon Tommy Alsmiller, who did a fantastic job, and just one thing after another came on board. Different people and different elements all came together. It took a lot of time, but that's when we wiped the sweat off our brows and we're like, okay, now you may not, there was a lot of worry, oh, they're going to change this, they're going to change that. But to me, that wasn't a concern. I think it was just the fact that they were preserving it, and it's historic property, and the new owner is into history and wants to keep it the same. That allayed all fears in my mind.
Yeah, that's very reassuring.
Yeah, what I think is really amazing about the Mai Kai is that there's so many different elements that you can take from it. Because like you're saying, it is a historical building. It is a very important building, if even just removed from Tiki itself and looked from that perspective, or it's one of the greatest Tiki establishments ever built, or it's one of the greatest craft cocktail bars at this point, one of the early ones. And the Mai Kai draws out such a passion from everybody. Really, I think it's probably has probably the most passionate crowd. So, and could you walk us through the restoration process? Because if anyone hasn't checked out your blog, you very meticulously documented kind of the process. Can you talk about what they did, and then just what was your perspective on it as it was going on?
Okay, to zoom out and look at the big picture, I think they did all the right things at the very beginning. They hired a very well-known, respected architect. They hired a very well-known and respected landscape architect, Perry Becker Design. They brought in experts in every field to help with the plan. And Bill knew he had to present a coherent plan to the city in order to make this happen. The city, because this is a historic property, the City Historic Preservation Board had to vote and approve all the plans. So there was that part of it. And then on the other side of it, they brought in a contractor who sat here every day and made sure the dump trucks were coming in and the dirt was moving in the parking lot, and the pipes were being laid underground, and the electrical entire electrical system was redone. The entire plumbing system was redone. All the tiki gas lines for all the tiki torches were redone. And this was a long, long process. It took place over years. And a lot of people got impatient. And I was hoping what I was doing in documenting all this is to show people that things are happening. It's not sitting still. It may take a while to get some of these things done, but because it was historic, every little thing had to be approved. You can't just go in and tear out. You think something would be simple. Oh, let's just tear this down. No, you can't. They promised the city of Oakland Park, and the city wanted them to just preserve everything as much as they could. They had to tear down a building that was on the north end of the property. It was called the Bora Bora building. It was vacant since 2005. That was one building that did get hurricane damage, and it was condemned. It was like a standalone building. It was used as a gift shop for many years and as an event space. And the city allowed them to tear down that building, but they didn't just bulldoze it and then, see you later. They went in there and salvaged as much as they could. Typhoon Tommy salvaged a lot of stuff on the Bora Bora building. I actually have a piece of the Bora Bora building at home. And
That's awesome.
in my home bar, but they took more salvageable stuff like Papa cloth and incorporated it into different things that Tommy was doing in the interior of the building that are just amazing. The length they went to preserve, and which also added more time. That's the other thing people don't understand. I would get frustrated with comments. People don't really know any better. They comment online, I'm a contractor. This should never take that long. And I felt like telling that person, this is not your typical restaurant build or even your typical restaurant refurbishment. They took a lot of detail, and I think the results speak for themselves. When you see it, you're amazed. And Tommy's mantra was, I want it to look like I was never here. So when you look at something, and Tommy could tell you, we walk around the Molokai bar or the showroom, and he'll say, oh, that's original, that's restored. That's something we rebuilt from scratch. That's something we just touched up. So it's amazing that the care that went into it. Tommy came from a background in theme parks. He spent 20 years with Universal and did some work for Disney, and he worked on the Harry Potter experiences. And he knows a lot about making things look right and make them, look spectacular. So, and he has a great love for Tiki. So this is not a theme park. This is still a Tiki and Polynesian restaurant that has such an amazing history. There's so much history here. That's what also excites me. I didn't start out to be a historian. I don't consider myself to be a historian, but I've sort of become one of the default historians here to talk about things and do little tours and help spread the word on just the history of the Mai Kai. We could spend 3 hours just talking about the history of every little thing, everywhere you walk around. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, again, it just there is so much to the Mai Kai in any different angle, the history, the family perspective. There's so much, and so I want to jump back to 2017 when you did your presentation for the first time. I'm curious to know, how are you feeling because you've been going there for so long, very passionate about it, using your blog to get the word out about it. How was it to present, and then how did you decide what you wanted to present then?
Well, that was at the peak of my cocktail exploration. So I was presenting on cocktails, and it was about the menus of the Mai Kai, how the menus evolved over the years through history, starting in 1956 up to here's today's cocktail menu. You can see how enormous.
Yeah.
So I've pretty much seen as many of these as I can to kind of document the history of the cocktails and where they came from. I learned from Jeff and Tim that many of them are Don the Beachcomber cocktails that have been retooled for the Mai Kai. So Jeff has done a lot of those same kind of presentations, but mine was specifically about the Mai Kai cocktail history, the menus, the drinks. And I don't know, I just felt comfortable. Because I was here, I felt at home. And it was among friends, I've been more nervous doing presentations in other cities for sure than I didn't have any nervousness getting on stage at the Mai Kai. It just felt natural. And I've done other things here, whether it be tours or little presentations here and there, and you just feel at home. I actually did a cocktail contest very early on, like when I first started the blog in 2010, Jeff was here for a presentation on the zombie, and they called it the Zombie Jamboree, and they invited what turned out to be mainly professional bartenders to compete in a contest and make a zombie. And they held the contest actually in the Mai Kai. And I knew the promoters from the rum festival. I talked them into letting me compete. So my cocktail competed and I didn't win. But you know, I wasn't nervous about that either, just because I knew the Mai Kai and I knew my cocktail was good and it was just fun to compete. And that kind of got my toes wet. And I've done a lot more cocktail creation since then. I have over 200 recipes on the blog now, so I'm gonna keep that going.
Wow.
And we can talk about what's coming next. That's gonna be very exciting.
Yeah. So you talked about how the blog started out as you taking your Mai Kai drink journey from Tiki Central to create your own thing. We've talked about how you've documented the history and the restoration of the Mai Kai. How has the blog really changed over time, and where do you see it going in the future?
Okay, well, I've done several things that have broadened the appeal of the blog, I hope. It was never meant to be a specific Mai Kai blog. I did 1 year of Mai Kai cocktails where once a week I would review a different Mai Kai cocktail every week and post my reviews and recipes. And that kind of took on a life of its own. So the Mai Kai cocktail guide is sort of like a cornerstone of my blog. It's been there since the beginning. And but beyond that, I like to cover the rest of the Tiki scene. I was covering the Hukilau every year, obviously, and any other event that I could get to or even not get to. I would do little stories. And I guess it was around 2015 or so, I created something called the Week in Tiki. And I had the bright idea, oh, the Tiki scene's kind of blowing up. There's stuff going on everywhere. Every week there's news. And
Yeah.
in those days, social media was not as prevalent. It was still there, but people weren't getting their news every single day on social media. There was still a thirst for Tiki Central and other sources. So I thought, I'll just write up the latest news every week. And after about a year, that got a little tiring because there was just so much news.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, it was a wealth of riches of content that I was writing about every single week. So I scaled back to monthly just to retain my sanity and allow me to do other things rather than just covering Tiki. It was sort of like a Tiki magazine that came out once a week or once a month. And but things continued to grow and there was more and more happening in that time frame. So what I did is I scaled it back to a events guide. So right now I have something called the Tiki Times, where I hope, I try to be one of the most comprehensive lists of Tiki events that you can find online anywhere. And it's a list of every Tiki event or adjacent. I have rum festivals, surf music festivals, a lot of traditional Hawaiian festivals, just the whole gamut, I think, of what people might be into in the Tiki scene, including Disney, which is another interest of mine that we didn't talk about, but I'm a big Disney file and my wife and I go to Disney World a lot. So we have that connection. And my Tiki Times is still being updated every other day. I try to keep it as current as I can. So that's a thing that I like to point to. Once a year, at the end of the year, I'll write about the entire year's worth of events and news. So rather than try to keep up with it every week, I still keep up with things, but my year in Tiki guide, I think, is very well thought out and well written. I've had compliments from people like Otto who say, thank you for doing this. You're documenting the history of the modern Tiki revival. So if you scroll down in my Tiki Times guide, you'll see the past 7 or 8 years, my annual recaps of the entire year. And I kind of, take a very sober approach. A lot of years we'll have some sad news, like when Oceanic Arts closed or when we lost Bob and Leroy. I mean, those are big news stories that I've covered as part of the, significant news of the year. So I'm trying to document the Tiki revival still, but the Mai Kai keeps me busy. I mean, since I started documenting the closing and the reopening, my blog has sort of turned into the Mai Kai news blog. But I still try to keep my toes in everything and cover a little bit of everything. cocktails included. Cocktails will be making a comeback very soon. So I never shy away from writing about cocktails and drinking cocktails. That's sort of my number one passion in Tiki.
Yeah. So we had Adrian Estacchio on our last episode, and he is his bar of choice is the Tiki tea. The Tiki tea and the Mai Kai have something in common, is that they keep their drink recipes very close to chest. If you can't answer this question, that's fine. But do you know the recipe? Do you know the actual recipes? If you can't answer, if you can't answer yes or no, that's all right.
I have a vague knowledge of the recipes, more than vague knowledge. I have a good knowledge of the recipes. What I don't have a good knowledge of is the actual ingredients. That's what makes, even if you have a secret, even if your recipe becomes public, the Mai Kai does something that Don the Beachcomber did, and the Tiki tea might still do, but on a more limited basis. They use secret syrups and secret mixes. So the Mai Kai uses something called number 7 in about a half a dozen drinks. And they have something called number 4. And they have something that's called falernum spelled backwards. That's not actually falernum. It's a second different falernum. And all these ingredients, even if you had a recipe like, I don't know, there's some simple ones. There's a lot of Mai Kai recipes that are very simple. And the shark bite, it's just rum, lime, sugar, and a little bit of sweetener. But then there's some complex drinks like the Black Magic or the Zombie that have number 4 in them and number 7 in them, and the special juice blend that they use now, or the special all these blends of things that you're never going to get your drink to taste exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's where it got interesting for me in the very beginning. Deciphering the recipes was a little, I wouldn't say it was easy, but there was I could track down like, oh, Don the Beachcomber's, Never Say Die. At the Mai Kai, it's called the Oh So Deadly, and they taste very similar. So just by nature of that association, I could pretty much figure out the Mai Kai recipe based on the Don the Beachcomber recipe with a slight variation. However, I could not duplicate it because I didn't know what juices they were using. I didn't know what rums they were using. I didn't know what syrups they were using. So that sent me down a multi-year journey to I'm still trying to duplicate the juices and the syrups and the rums. That's the fun part for me. That's the ultra geeky journey. So that's not a direct answer. There's quite a few recipes that are easy to figure out and well-known, Don the Beachcomber drinks. And then there's others that are just a total head scratcher. But, I've kind of figured out a good portion of the drinks.
Do you have one that's like the number 1 on the target list that you want to know, but it's like catching the tiger by the tail. You just can't seem to find a good starting point for it?
Actually, I have all the classic drinks I pretty much have down, at least some kind of either historic recipe that, the half a dozen or so Mai Kai recipes that were published in different publications. There's also recipes that go back to Don, so I've been able to figure those out. The ones that are interesting now, because we have someone of the high caliber like Corey Starr as not only beverage director, but general manager, he's instituting a modern craft cocktail program. So he's created at least a dozen new recipes. You can get them out in the Bora Bora bar, which is the new outdoor bar. And I'm actually drinking one of them now. This is the Cannibal. It's in a Cannibal mug that Sven Kirsten designed for Tiki Farm. And Corey and his head bartender, Michael DeMay, created a drink for the Cannibal. It's called the Cannibal. However, they made the mistake of letting it slip that this is a riff on the Royal Hawaiian. So all you have to do is a little bit of research online and you'll see, oh, the Royal Hawaiian is a historic cocktail from Hawaii. You can figure out the ingredients that are in it and reverse engineer this, which is all fine, but there's a specific gin they use. And I talked to Michael about this, and he's pretty nonchalant. He says, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, why does it taste so distinctive?" He said, "I just made a pineapple strawberry shrub," and I'm like, "A strawberry pineapple shrub for a home bartender? That's a little daunting,
Yeah.
So there's those new drinks that they're using, craft cocktail techniques, whether it's shrubs or there's a couple new drinks out there on the menu that I'll never get right, just because they've created such an amazing, new cocktail program that kind of coexists with the classics. The classics are the classics. They'll always be the classics, and I enjoy both. But I've tried to perfect the classics, and I'm just working my way through the new ones. And the new ones are fun. It's a fun challenge. He told me how to make that shrub, so I'm going to try to make it one of these days.
I think definitely that level of challenge, the mystique behind it keeps it interesting and keep people coming back again and again, because when you have that great cocktail out and it's unduplicatable at home, that's what makes it special.
Right.
I know we've been places before and Ryley's like, I think I could probably make this at home. And you come home and it's about the same. It takes away some of that specialness of the bar. But a place like the Mai Kai just has this reputation and this great mystique around their cocktails that keeps people intrigued and involved.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a lot of people, but there's some people who used to get upset with me about they thought I was revealing the real recipes. I was revealing I call them tributes, very close, but there's so many people that can't make it here. I mean, you guys included.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I have people that follow me from overseas, folks in London or in other countries that will not be able to come here, and they make their drinks there. They appreciate, the Black Magic recipe took on a life of its own, and people are still posting that. Just the other day, I saw someone post a Black Magic recipe that I posted many years ago, and it sort of gives people that have been here, they get that taste that reminds them of the Mai Kai, and people who've never been here get a chance to taste what it's like here. And it's just the icing on the cake. Obviously, just sitting at home making the cocktail is not going to make you feel like you're at the Mai Kai.
Right.
You're not going to have a mystery girl or a Molokai girl serving you the drink, but even that, you're not getting the full experience that you get while you're here.
Yeah. So you haven't shied away from Tiki traveling too. You've traveled to a number of locations and yourself. And so I'm curious to see, how do you see the scenes in other cities that you've gone to, either previously in years before or now? How do you see that things have changed or maybe different in different parts if they don't have something like the Mai Kai? Maybe they have a couple different smaller bars or something like that.
I'd like to avoid a broad sweeping analysis, which some people try to do, like, oh, the Tiki scene is not what it used to be. This is the scene has evolved or it's changed. I think every town, every city, every community, every region is different.
Absolutely.
I like to get micro about it and look at, Florida in general has grown spectacularly. I mean, I can't speak for Cleveland, I can't speak for Portland, I can't speak for Chicago, but I know each of those cities has its own unique scene that ebbs and flows and goes through changes, and bars come and go and close and open. And that's just what makes the Tiki community vibrant is, you can go to different parts of the country and enjoy it in a different way. I don't like being elitist and say, oh, actually coming from Florida makes me not an elitist, because a lot of the California people tend to be a little, how should I put this? They're proud of their culture. They're proud of their Tiki culture, and as they should be. I have tons of friends in California, and I love going to California, but every community is different. Florida's never going to be like California, and the northern colder climates have their own unique scene too. So I just like to see Tiki popping up in more and more places. That's something not so much from traveling, but because I only make it to some big events. But when I doing my yearly recap on the blog, I take meticulous notes throughout the year. I'm documenting all the news that I see online, and I read every magazine I can, and openings and closings of bars. That's something I try to do every year. Even during COVID, there were bar openings. There were people, new people coming in and creating a new experience. And as long as they have some reverence for the past, you have to look back in order to look forward in Tiki, I think. Every scene is different. So the more the merrier, I think.
Yeah, you talked about specifically that South Florida culture, and we've seen it grow a lot originally the event there in Florida was the Hukilau, and it's expanded to other events like Tiki a Go-Go, which even blends an interest in Disney with their going to Disney World and everything. How have you seen like the events change specifically there in Florida and the incorporation of Disney and some of those like specifically Florida elements?
You're right. It has grown a lot, and I love Tiki a Go-Go. I've been to the event, and I'm hoping to go back this year and be involved. It's something you guys should look at for sure. Come down and be a part of. A lot of my friends are in Central Florida. A lot of my friends either work for Disney or have great tiki bars in the Disney area, in the Orlando area. You know, not to take anything away from everything else in Central Florida, but for a lot of us, Disney was sort of like the hub. When I went to my first visit to Disney World was 1972. So
Wow.
I'm no newbie when it comes to Disney. I was 11 years old, and I distinctly remember the monorail in my mind. That was part of my childhood, and that mid-century, that imagery of the monorail and the Haunted Mansion and Tomorrowland and all that stuff to me was not, it wasn't, you know, childish stuff. I was getting into my teens and appreciating it. Unfortunately, I didn't get back into appreciating it until many, many years later. My wife just happens to be a big Disney fan, and she was a moderator of a Disney message board. When at the same time I was doing Tiki Central, she was on her Disney message board, and we were kind of both into the same kind of, you know, a subculture kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, all these overlaps came into my view. I'm like, wait a minute, Shag does art for Disney and he does art for Hukilau. And then there's Kevin and Jody and all these other crossovers. So the crossover between Disney and Tiki was just natural. I mean, it happens out in California even more so than it does here. And then, of course, we got Trader Sam's, and you know, it's one of my favorite places to visit when I'm in Disney World. And Tiki Go-Go just kind of embracing that. And the Orlando area in general is just booming. There's multiple great tiki bars in Orlando, more so than down on the southeast coast where I am. I mean, the Mai Kai kind of dwarfs everything else down here.
Yeah.
We have Kona Room in Miami, which is an excellent place to check out. There's a little Trader Vic's on the South Beach. It's not really Trader Vic's. It's a Trader Vic's adjacent place called the Bamboo. What's it called? The Bamboo Room.
I think it's, yeah.
And the Florida scene, though, in other cities, Tampa, Jacksonville, there's just a lot going on that there wasn't before. We've always had a history of A, rum, and B, what they call tiki bars that aren't really tiki bars. They're just big thatched huts that you'll come across on a beach. Like, oh, but they're watching, you know, sports on TV and drinking Bud Lights in these tiki bars. And that caused a lot of scorn from purists who came here and saw advertising on, you know, oh, there's a tiki bar down the street. Let's go check it out. Now, that's a Florida tiki bar, but because it's such a, you know, it's a tourist community. So of course, you're going to have that. And I think that's an East Coast thing. It's not really, if you go up the East Coast, there's other tiki bars that are not tiki bars, correct? Up in your area, please?
Yeah, we have one right down the road.
This is probably one of the most egregious ones too.
It's like I think it's called Tiki. Is it Tiki Lee's Dock and Bar? And it's on the bay, so it has like a marina. It doesn't even have a very beach kind of culture, but it's 100% like a thatched hut.
Yeah, and they serve exotic crabs from the Chesapeake, which 20 feet away, very exotic.
Yeah, I mean, technically they're thatched huts or chicky huts. There's specific words for it, but somehow in the vernacular on the East Coast, maybe it was the 70s during the dark days, everyone started calling them tiki huts, tiki bar huts. And I when I worked at the newspaper, I was an editor. I would see stories and I'd say, don't call that tiki. You can't call. But I lost that battle as an editor. You just can't. You can't common lingo. But at any rate, we know the difference. If you live here, you know the difference on what's that kind of tiki versus Polynesian. I mean, there's a distinct difference, obviously.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I forget what the question was. Oh, about Florida. Yeah, there's just a lot going on now in Florida with the Don the Beachcomber brand. I wanted to mention them because having Don the Beachcomber come back to life in in Florida, no less, is kind of a big deal. And, they had to close their first location due to a hurricane, and that might be the downside of opening in Florida. But I think they have a master plan, and I have confidence that the Down the Beachcomber folks are going to reopen in Orlando very soon and have, a great platform for bringing back the history of Tiki through the lens of Down the Beachcomber.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see everything that's going on in Florida right now. Again, the California folks are very, can be very, they're spoiled with tiki. And back to the different areas. I mean, even the California scene, it's hard to wrap it all into one because San Diego is different than the LA crowd, and LA is different than Central California, and it's different than San Francisco. And so now that Florida is getting more and more, it's going to be interesting to see maybe how like Orlando does it versus the Miami area.
My hope, fingers crossed, that we can keep that kind of a united state scene that you come from when you're an underdog. You kind of have that one for all and all for one kind of mentality. I don't want to see the tiki scene fracture in Florida like you're talking about, where there's those people from the other coast are coming over here. I never want to see that, but I haven't traveled enough to California to see that myself. I mean, the people are lovely. I don't want to say anything bad about it.
Yeah.
They welcome us with open arms at the Tiki Oasis. I've been there twice with the Mai Kai crew. And when the Mai Kai goes to Tiki Oasis, they're treated like royalty. And that's just amazing.
Yeah. And I'm not saying anything about like the ways that cities do it negatively. I'm just, in San Diego, they have certain bars or places that when they want to do a meetup, they have locations to go to compared to a lot of the Midwest crowd. It's a lot of home bars just because they don't have commercial ones. And with that, it spawns a certain level of how to be creative about it, which is really fun to see.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always interesting. The Northeast and the Midwest guys who don't have those places, they get really creative, really fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Midwest. I spent some years in the Midwest when I was in school and middle school and a little bit of high school. So I kind of remember that area as not being so great in the 70s. So I'd love to get back to the Midwest and see all the stuff that's going on there.
Yeah. So we've talked about your blog, we've talked about your presentations, what you're doing now. Do you have anything coming up that you expect or some of our listeners can look forward to?
Okay, so blog wise, I have plans to relaunch the Mai Kai cocktail guide. And if you've been reading my blog, you'll see there's teasers, and I've posted my latest ratings of all the drinks, and that's just a teaser because what's going to happen is I have, let me see here, of the 38 classic drinks on the menu, I have 28 updated recipes, 6 new tribute recipes, and 4 slightly adjusted recipes. So I'll be posting pretty much a fresh slate of 38 classic drinks. On top of that, I have, of the 12 new recipes that Corey has launched, I have tribute recipes for most of those too. So there's going to be a lot of new and updated Mai Kai cocktails coming to the blog. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it. A lot has changed in 15 years, and to make a big splash online, you have to do things like video and other things that I'm thinking of incorporating into it. So it won't just be, okay, here's the recipe, have fun. I want to kind of make a big deal out of that. And I also want to just continue to cover the Mai Kai as best I can, and also events,
Yeah.
So it's separate from the Atomic Grog. I'll be doing some events, in different cities. I don't know if it's announced yet, but I'll be in Atlanta for Inuhele
We will be too.
in January. I'll see you guys there.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk because I'll be doing a presentation, and I talked to Jonathan about this, and rather than me doing, I've been there twice already. It's one of my favorite, I wouldn't call it a new event. It's sort of like a mid-level. That's not the right word either, but it's not a huge event. It's great. You get to see everybody there, and some great people there, and Trader Vic's is there. But rather than do another Mai Kai presentation, I'm going to do a presentation on the history of the Tiki revival, right up your alley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But he wants me to concentrate on the early days. So I'm going to go all the way back and try to, figure out the very early seed of the revival.
Well,
Right up Riley's
yes,
alley,
I have
for
done
sure.
some serious research recently. So if you need some jumping off points,
Yeah.
or old phone books that show what was open at times, let me know because I've gone deep into research for another thing I'm doing right now.
Yes. Yeah, I've watched all your videos, so and I usually actually listen on audio most of the time, but
Yeah.
you guys are doing a great job
Thank you.
bringing all this material back. I mean, a lot of it's on Tiki Central if you know where to look,
Yeah.
but a lot of it's been lost. So it's great that, especially audio, people telling their stories. You know, you get
Yes.
more out of history with that kind of spoken word history. So after Inuhele, I'll probably be at Tiki Go-Go, like I said, and Hukilau, of course. So there's no shortage of events, and keeping myself busy doing all that. And that's about it. Trying not to do too much. Enjoy my retirement from
Yes,
the daily grind. And there's no better place to do it than here. So,
absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate your
Yes.
time, and we appreciate you telling your story and not just on your blog, but talking with us about the Mai Kai. I mean, we're all grateful that it's been there, or
Yeah.
it's still here, and we're definitely grateful for you for documenting everything you do with the different events, how the revival has changed over life, and everything you've done. So thank you so much.
it's really been my pleasure. I mean, this is not tedious work, believe me. Calling Maluna.
Thank you again to Jim Hurricane Hayward for sitting down with us. Your passion for Tiki and the Mai Kai have inspired us and so many others.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us. Like I said in the beginning, his work has helped us out in research several times, so make sure you go over to his blog, atomicgrog.com, to find drink recipes, tiki history, and so much more.
You can also find Hurricane Hayward's upcoming events at his personal website, jimhayward.com.
We'll be seeing Hurricane Hayward down in Atlanta this January for Inuhele. We're really excited to be seeing you there, and we hope that we see some of you, the listener, down there as well.
As always, you can find us on social media at The Tiki Talk Show or Kona Cove _Home Tiki Bar. You can send us an email at thetikitalkshow@gmail.com, and be sure to click the link tree down in the show notes to find our Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere you can find the show. Be sure to check out our Summer in Review on Riley's new channel at Tiki Today on YouTube. We had a lot of fun just talking about our past summer, what we've been up to, and there are so many great photos and pictures of tiki bars we've been visiting. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great time to be able to bring you that episode. You're going to hear a lot of stories, like Ellie said, about places we've been. I named the episode 25,000 Miles of Tiki because I roughly calculated that we traveled about 25,000 miles this summer. So we have a lot to talk about. You're also going to hear some of our funny stories before we started the show, and I think we've tossed in a couple about some of the funny things that have happened since we've started the show too. So make sure you go check that out. But we want to thank you again for tuning in, continuing to support us, both here on the Tiki Talk Show and Tiki Today. It really means a lot. But we hope to talk to you again soon. Until then.
Bye.